Welcome, dear friends, to TIBP Live. Because of the red blood moon this March that happened, social media netizens exploded with posts saying that, commenting that this is sign of the Antichrist coming and will reveal himself very soon. World War III warnings are rising. The Gog and Magog battle begins. Some comments. And the search for end time Bible prophecy skyrockets according to Google Trends. Has a lot of signs revealing because of the events happening right now. But there's more. March 9, 2026. Exorcist priest Ripperger shared in an explosive recent interview that amasses millions of views. He exposes the Antichrist and the scripture's reference to the Abomination of Desolation taking its place in the temple is actually a reference to the Catholic churches being compromised. Matthew 24, verse 15 to 16. When therefore you shall see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, he that readeth, let him understand. March 9, 2026. Priests, or as they call them, Father Ripperger, explained the reference in an interview with podcaster, U.S. former Navy SEAL Sean Ryan, while refuting Protestants who mistakenly believe that the book of Daniel's reference to the temple, quote unquote, in which the abomination of desolation will stand at the time of the Antichrist is the Jewish temple.
Basically describes in detail satanic rituals that are taking place among the Vatican hierarchy, abomination of desolation entering the holy place. And he says that many, especially Protestants, believe falsely that this refers to the temple in Jerusalem. And, that this gives rise to people saying, oh, the temple of Jerusalem will be rebuilt, et cetera, et cetera. But actually, no, this refers to the corruption inside the Catholic Church. And that is the new holy temple or holy place, if you will, from Matthew 24. Watch him explain it.
The difficulty is people tend to misinterpret the book of Daniel, which says when the abomination of desolation takes its seat in the temple. What they don't realize is that is not a reference to the Jewish temple. That's where the Protestants are getting it wrong. So a lot of the Protestants are thinking, oh, well, let's help the Jews rebuild the temple, and then that will usher in, because Christ is going to return, after they think the temple is going to be rebuilt. And then as a result of that, the temple has to be rebuilt in order for the Antichrist to put himself in there. So let's do that so that the Antichrist will come, and then that means that Christ will come, and that's kind of their reasoning behind it. Well, first of all, just getting through the years of the Antichrist is pushing that. But
as they address him, Father Ripperger, abomination of desolation refers to the Catholic Church becoming compromised. These Protestants want to help rebuild the Jewish temple, according to the article, in Jerusalem in an effort to usher in the Antichrist and by extension the second coming of Christ. Ripperger noted, I quote, the fathers of the church are clear that it will never be rebuilt, and that the reference to the abomination of desolation taking its seat in the temple is actually a reference to the Catholic Church, explained the exorcist priest, referring to Antichrist. The book of Daniel says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many in 1 week, and half of the week the victim and the sacrifice shall fail, and there shall be in the temple the abomination of desolation, and the desolation shall continue even to the consummation and to the end. As Catholic understands, according to their beliefs, the daily sacrifice of lambs upon the altar of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem derived their value and meaning from their fulfillment by the sacrifice of Christ, the Messiah renewed daily in an unbloody manner in the Holy Mass, as they address the Mass in Eucharist. End of quote. Dear friends, is Daniel teaching us that the daily sacrifice points to Rome's Eucharist? Absolutely not. This points to the sacrificial system of the lambs in the Old Testament, the type. And this system of sacrifice was put to an end when Jesus died on the cross, when type meant anti-type.
Well, first of all, just getting through the years of the Antichrist is pushing that. But the fathers of the church are very clear that it will never be rebuilt, and that the reference to the abomination of desolation taking its seat in the temple is actually a reference to the Catholic Church. The abomination of desolation taking its seat in the temple is actually a reference to the Catholic Church. This is in 1960, which tells you that the 50s was a particular problem with its infiltration. And then once they got into positions of authority, they allowed men who had these problems to stay in. Well, so then you have this collapse among the morals in the Sixth Commandment, among the clergy in the 50s. That's why you see this concomitant problem in the 60s where you have the free love movement. You also see with the homosexuality, you see the same problem. There's a concomitant problem now with homosexuality that starts in the 70s and flourishes in the 80s, and then now we've got just a massive problem with it. And it's because of the fact that the graces aren't coming into the world in the manner.
Pointing Daniel 9:27 to justify the Eucharist is just blasphemy. The Bible is against this practice. What is the real meaning of the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel? Matthew 24 verse 15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth let him understand. Notice that the abomination of desolation could be seen by Christ's followers, and that abomination of desolation was spoken of previously by the prophet Daniel, and the abomination was to stand in the holy place. What are the prophetic signs and stages of the abomination of desolation? Some teach that this prophecy, the abomination of desolation, was fulfilled when Antiochus Epiphanes interrupted the temple sacrifices between 168 and 165 BC. The abomination they point to is the pig Antiochus had offered on the altar in the temple complex. Others believe the abomination of desolation refers to a future time when an atheistic Antichrist will overthrow the temple in Jerusalem and use it as his throne. Then there are those who believe the abomination of desolation is the Roman standards which were worshipped in Jerusalem in 70 AD at the time of its destruction by Titus. But none of these interpretations are correct. Why? Because Jesus tells us that our study of the abomination of desolation should focus on the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 9 is not about the Antichrist, but instead it is about Jesus Christ and the ministry that he will do. First stage, abomination in the holy place, Jerusalem's captivity. The key that unlocks the mystery of this prophetic event is found in the 2 verses of Daniel. In the 3rd year of the reign of Joachim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. During the time King Joachim reigned as vassal of Babylon, the prophet Jeremiah preached in Jerusalem. God's message was that Babylonian invasion was God's punishment for Judah's sin and that the Hebrews should repent. Joachim called for Jeremiah's scroll to be read in his court, but as every 3 or 4 columns of the scroll were read, the king cut them off with a scribe's knife and threw them into the fire pot until the entire scroll was burned. Second stage, the Jews reject the real Messiah, Jesus. This desolation of Jerusalem was prophesied by Daniel to come as a result of the people rejecting Messiah the Prince. Daniel chapter 9, 25 to 27. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Verse 26, and after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. Verse 27, then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abominations shall be one who makes desolate. In verse 25, Messiah is promised to Israel, and the city's restoration is also predicted, but then ominously all is prophesied for doom again. Verse 26 speaks of Messiah being killed by his own people and how this act would cause their city and sanctuary to be desolated once again. God is not orchestrating Netanyahu's revelation of a coming Messiah. God showed us from prophecy that this is an abomination, rejecting Jesus as the Messiah. Jesus placed the guilt upon the people by stating they knew not the time of their visitation. As a result of not responding to God's call to turn from their abominations, their temple was to be desolated. This prophecy was fulfilled in 70 AD when the Roman armies of Titus burned the temple to the ground. The second desolation of the temple perfectly paralleled its first destruction. On both occasions, the abominations were done by the apostate people of God, and the desolation was an act of judgment performed by a heathen army. This desolation of Jerusalem was prophesied by Daniel to come as a result of rejecting the Messiah, the Prince. Because Israel rejected the Messiah, they lost their place as God's favored people. Jesus predicted this will take place by saying, "The kingdom of God shall be taken from you and given to a nation bringing forth the fruits thereof." Matthew 21 verse 43. The final stage of abomination, the mark of the beast. How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? Discerning students of prophecy history realize that these verses predict the formation and ascension of the power by the papacy. It is an undisputable fact of history that the papacy brought into the Christian church the very same practices of paganism for which ancient Jerusalem was destroyed. One has to do only a little study to see how image worship, Tammuz worship, Sunday sacredness were introduced to Christianity during the Dark Ages. Most Protestant churches accede to the apostasy by continuing the practice of abominations that have their roots firmly fixed in ancient pagan religions, which were established to destroy God's truth. Both Catholicism and Protestantism have fostered abominations in God's holy place, His church. The Church of Babylon in Revelation 17 points to the Church of Rome, and John describes the Vatican as habitation of devils. You will read that in Revelation 18, that Rome, the kingdom of the Antichrist, has become the habitation of devils and false doctrines. He gave a mighty shout, "Babylon is great, is fallen. Babylon the Great is fallen. She has become a den of demons, habitation of devils of every kind and evil spirit." How do we set our hearts free? Answer: when the heart accepts the truth in Jesus and the teachings of the scriptures. But the good news, dear friends, today is that you can approach Jesus and totally surrender to Him and to His will, and you will be sealed by the Father, obeying the commandments of God and living by faith. And you will be ready for His soon return. You be ready and you will stay ready. Dearest friends, is this your desire to become ready for His soon return? Kindly type in the comment section, "Jesus is the center of my life." Thank you, dearest friends. Kindly like and share Truth Found in Bible Prophecy.